I really find a lot of value in just being able to make your own physical products. And like you said, now with YouTube and all the different resources available, that's something that's, anyone can learn it. I never took a course on Fusion. I've never really paid for that. I've learned pretty much everything I know off of different YouTube videos.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, the podcast series where we talk to makers, designers, and engineers from shop to shop. Today, we're talking to Joseph Willis from J. Willis Makes. Joseph's a hobbyist, but his work is really sophisticated, even though he doesn't really have formal training in this kind of thing. He designs useful products that pretty much anybody can print on a basic 3D printer. And he's also got a knack for describing this stuff in really simple terms very quickly. He's got a great community around him on social media channels and his own platform. And today we're going to learn his inspiring story that hopefully gives you some ideas on the kind of stuff you can do in Fusion. Okay, Joseph Willis, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I know I mentioned to you before we started recording that, it's something that I saw the Shop Talk on YouTube, and something that I enjoyed watching myself. So it's really cool to be here. So I really appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah. I mean, it's seemed like a great idea to talk to you. We've all of us at the company have noticed your work. As I was looking through it over the past couple of days, I realized how recently this all came together. I mean, it seems like a year ago it was just you and your fiance at the beach and stuff like that. And now it's all of a sudden, you have this really big following and you've got this Fusioneers community that you kind of spearheaded yourself. And then, you've got a couple side hustles and you're from a small town in Mississippi, right?
Yeah, it's actually called Philadelphia, Mississippi. And, when I say that I'm from Philadelphia, everyone automatically assumes Pennsylvania.
I know where that is.
Just kind of a normal guy from Mississippi, played sports growing up and then decided to do biomedical engineering for undergrad. And that was where I was kind of first introduced to CAD. We actually used a different program other than Fusion when I was going through that kind of basic CAD engineering class that basically every engineer takes, and ended up not really using CAD after that for about a year or so. And then we had a senior design project, and the school that I was at actually switched the CAD programs, and I had a Mac at the time and wasn't really optimized for the program they switched to. And I'd seen some stuff on YouTube about Fusion, so I decided to try it out, and then just really got to really enjoy designing stuff. And, I'm not an industrial designer by trade. I'm actually a doctor in residency currently. So throughout, from the time I started using Fusion, in undergrad and then went to medical school, I kind of used it off and on throughout that period of time. And I think, from my perspective, at least, you have, Fusion is a key part of design. And then you also have, 3D printing, which is really democratized the ability for people to actually, design and make stuff. So for me, that was a really, really neat thing to experience, is being able to actually, think, oh, I could probably make something that might work for this, and then think of it in your mind, and then kind of iterate on it rapidly with 3D printing, and then have something that's actually useful for you, whether it's like a simple hook design, or for instance, I've been making some cable organizer things and a lot of other stuff on my social media that I kind of think of here and there. And it's just been something I've really enjoyed. And it's a kind of a creative outlet for me in a way, something that takes my mind off of medicine, and something that I think that is just a skill that you can grow and learn. And I've been using Fusion for probably 7 years now. I still learn stuff from other people, watching tips and tricks on YouTube and talking to people. So it's such a multifaceted program. You can spend years like I have and still learn new tricks. That's another thing I like about it. It just seems like there's shortcuts and things that you can learn from other people that are really valuable. And it's just, for me, at the end of the day, it's just really awesome to be able to think of something in your head and actually design it and then hold it in your hand, with the 3D print. So
I could see the biomedical engineering tie-in, right? Because you're doing that's very technical. You're dealing with technology, obviously, but very different from designing stuff in 3D. Especially being a doctor. What kind of doctor are you going to be when you're done with your residency?
Yeah, I'm in radiology residency, so
Yeah.
I'll be going into radiology. And there's
Mhm.
actually some kind of interesting parallels with that and 3D printing and design because there's a lot of 3D
All 3D.
visualization stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
with CT scans and MRIs, where you have to kind of know your visuospatial
Yeah.
positioning and things like that. So, and then even the CTs, are the way they take the pictures in slices, and then there's the correlation with you slicing a 3D model. So there's some carryover there as well. But yeah, and they also do some 3D printing now for like pre-surgical planning and things like that, where your surgeons kind of see the anatomy and hold it in their hands and kind of plan out how they want to approach a different surgeries and things like that. So uh, kind of a lot of crossover between radiology and 3D printing and 3D design. So I think that it's a good fit for me, and I've enjoyed it so far. I've actually been in an intern year the first year, so I'm just now starting radiology.
Mhm.
The intern year is kind of a intro year that's not necessarily radiology, but now I'm doing that and been enjoying it so far. So hopefully get to do some design and some 3D printing with radiology. So be good.
That's funny. I never really thought about that, but that's what medicine is, right? If you're dealing with whether it's radiology or imaging or surgery or something like that, it's inherently three-dimensional and super complicated,
Right.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you look at I used to love looking at those medical illustration books,
Oh
um,
yeah.
anatomy books and all that stuff. The illustrations are just mind-blowing, like because it's all everything is wrapped together and this is inside this thing and it's all and you have to like sort of peel it out. I mean, it used to be you just had to work with cadavers, I guess, to understand any of that stuff, which of course you still do, but must be a huge help to be able to see stuff in 3D.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you see it in 2D on the screen, but then there are some 3D reconstructions that sometimes occur. And a lot of neurovascular stuff can be 3D reconstructed, so you can kind of get a better visualization of all the arteries and veins that course through the brain and other parts of your body. So it's a really good skill to have, really, for people in medicine. And outside of that, just being able to visualize things in 3D is sometimes challenging, but I think it's a good skill to develop. And I think modeling in 3D is a good way to kind of think of like how is this going to work in three-dimensional space. And Fusion's obviously been what I've used for that. And you can do the different, even for if you slice something, you see the the slices, in the slicer, or you can do like a cross sectional cut in Fusion to see how tolerances are interacting with each other and things like that. So a lot of correlation with radiology, especially.
Yeah, and it's such a cool time to have a hobby because you have people like yourself who get into something and then you instantly have this platform you can share it with everybody. But easier said than done. I think a lot of times people when we consume content, we sort of take it for granted. Oh, it's just somebody that's good at it and he likes to share, but it's a ton of work. I mean, when I look at your reels on Instagram, especially, I mean, you've got a whole tutorial packed into what's the limit? Like 60 seconds, something like that.
Yeah. So the limit on YouTube is 60 seconds, and I think the limit on YouTube Shorts is 90. And then TikTok, you can go up to pretty long videos, but essentially, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. So you want to be able to cut part of it to. I post on all three platforms, and it's usually basically the same video. But for YouTube, you need it to make sense under 60 seconds. But then for TikTok, once you get to 10,000 followers, like to get paid, it has to be over 60 seconds. So I try to hit around 63, 64. So uh, it's kind of an interesting game to play. But now that you mentioned that, I started off sharing just kind of long form tutorials on YouTube, and I'm kind of getting back to that in some degree with the Fusioneers tutorials. But for the shorts, I essentially decided, what I want to do is give as much value as I can within the time that is allotted. And I basically try to, take people through the design in as much detail as I can, within the time limit. And that's really when my channel started to grow more, was, just trying to give value with tips and tricks and just explaining kind of my thought process. I'm, like I said before, I'm not an industrial designer. I've never claimed to be one, but I have learned some tips and tricks just from watching other people on YouTube and just from doing it over and over. Once you do hundreds of designs of different things, you get better at it miraculously. But yeah, it's something that I've started to feel like, I kind of caught my groove there with trying to just explain how I do things. And, I think people get a lot out of it, and that helps, people watch the full video because they're kind of interested to see, the final end product. And then also people will share it, if they get value from it. So that's really what I try to do. And like you said, I didn't really share much until kind of recently. And I think that decided, I think it's helpful to people, and it's something that I enjoy doing. And like anything else, it's a skill. I wasn't good at the beginning. I still think some of my videos aren't great. They could always be better. Kind of analytical and see small details that you would change in old videos. But yeah, I've just gradually tried to get a little bit better each time, and I think that it's been working out overall for me. So
when you're looking around trying to get tips and tricks, you usually have to dig pretty deep into a bigger tutorial that has some aspect of it that you're trying to find. But I think you've done a really good job of sort of distilling the things that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the way you're doing it is you step back and say, what would I need to know about this if I didn't, if I was new to it or whatever.
yeah,
You keep saying you're not a industrial designer or a engineer or whatever, but more and more with this stuff, those titles don't really mean as much. Of course there will always be a place for, professional engineers and industrial designers and all the education that goes into those things. Don't mean to downplay that, but there's definitely a niche where once upon a time you would have had to have a formal education in it to do what you're doing here. Right.
right.
But the tools have been democratized to a point that you can do this degree of work without any formal training, and just from, watching stuff on social media. I talk to customers all the time that have started, fully profitable businesses, just watching YouTube tutorials. And then that builds into something else, and they start learning something else. And then they find find their way into a community where people can help out. And now they've got a full business going, and they've never spent an hour in a classroom,
Right. Yeah. And that's what, this applies to me because I never took a course on Fusion. I've never really paid for that. I've learned pretty much everything I know off of different YouTube videos. I think, having the combination of the ability to model stuff. I know there's some people that like to 3D print, just download free STLs and, do that. And then there's also people that only model. They do, they're basically just make models all day, and whether that's for like concept art or other things. But I really find a lot of value in just combining the two, actually being able to make your own physical products. And like you said, now with YouTube and all the different resources available, that's something that's, anyone can learn it. I think, if you can measure things and you can draw circles and squares and straight lines, there's more to it than that. But if you can do those basic things, you can design things that are useful to you. And I think that's really satisfying to me. And whether it's something that, other people will buy or not, just as, there's a common saying of like, make something for yourself. And then, there's usually some other people that would find it useful. That's kind of what I've tried to live by, at least. And it's worked out pretty well for me. And, there's always people on social media, when you start sharing things, they'll have different opinions, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, whether you agree with it or not. But I think there's been at least some people, just from judging by the reaction that some of the stuff on social media has gotten that they've liked some of the designs I've made, and that's pretty cool to see. When I design things, I guess that's one thing that I think about a lot is, I'll probably spend at least 5 to 10 hours on most designs, like iterating on it, thinking about it, like uh, for the cable holder, this is the clean cable caddy is what I came up with. This is the design I'm referring to, or the original design. A lot of people were complaining about the tight radius of curvature there, and I will admit it is a tight radius of curvature. But the whole point was to make something that was efficient and looks nice. The cable sits pretty clean, stacked on top of each other, and it'll go in your bag or book bag pretty easily. And the big thing that I kind of thought was a decent idea was the way that the ends are basically plug into the print, and that was something that I was trying to solve in my brain of like, how can I make the ends look clean, with whatever I design. And that's what I came up with. And a lot of people mentioned the radius curvature, damaging your cable, and I basically decided to make the biggest radius of curvature I could fit on the printer, and it ended up working perfectly for the 1 meter cable. I think the diameter was over 10 inches. It barely fit on the Prusa XL, which is a relatively large 3D printer. And I understand that if you want your cable to last forever, you probably shouldn't use that. But at the same time, it's like, guys, I've probably thought about the design more than most people do in the 1 minute, that it takes to watch the design. So like sometimes, yeah, I don't think about everything, but I try to take a lot of things into account when I'm trying to be thoughtful about what I'm trying to design. So, but yeah, it was fun, and I thought that some people hopefully got a good laugh out of it. And if they want that design and have a Prusa XL, it's available for free on the website. So feel free to use it if you wish. So,
has anybody sent you pictures of theirs?
Some people said they were going
to
print it off, but I don't. I know people have printed off the clean cable, like the actual real design that I made, but the other one, I haven't seen any other pictures of it. But there's not a ton of people that have the Prusa XL size printer, so I don't know if they'll be able to fit it on their size printer. But yeah, it's fun. I try to have fun with social media. I think that's a lot of people get bent out of shape about things that are kind of minor in my opinion, and I try to just enjoy the interactions. And when there are genuine comments about people that are being thoughtful, I take those into account and try to, like I said, that a caliper video essentially stemmed from a comment that I got about how to measure differently. And to be fair, sometimes I'd make clips in the videos of me just trying to do something that goes with the words I'm saying. So sometimes I don't measure it perfectly in the video, and some people will catch that. But it's fun to see the different comments and the different kind of tips you get from people that are well-meaning and others that are kind of trolls themselves. So it's fun though.
One of the things I think that's so important about personal Fusion users, people that are hobbyists, they're important to us because you guys do this kind of work and you share it, you put it out there, you comment on each other's work. The pros in most cases aren't spending a whole lot of time putting their process on social media, right?
Like, yeah,
that's work. You do it. It's just like you're not making content about learning radiology,
right.
Like this is my profession. This is work. My hobby is fishing or, woodworking or whatever it is, right? But, when it's, when it's a hobby, that's something you'll actually talk about and share about, and people will ask you about it and so on. So we end up with this massive community of people that are helping each other out and learning stuff, and everybody benefits from that. It's not just, hobbyists like yourself. It's everybody. It's people, doing it for a living. So, we really appreciate that. Like the fact that you put this kind of effort into it to just put it out there. It's great. It's a big help to everybody. So thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why, I like sharing stuff just in general. And I think sometimes I have decent ideas about different things, but I always been curious as part of why I went into engineering, of like how things work or how people make different things. And that's why I kind of like to share at least my thought process behind some of the things I do and how I come to the final product. And, like you said, there isn't a lot of stuff out there with, especially the bigger businesses. And I mean, some of it's for, legitimate reasons. They don't want people to copy them and things like that. I understand the business side of that. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that are out there that are curious and stuff like that. And with social media, you can share things. And I think there are some businesses on YouTube that do a pretty good job of being more open than others. I think CNC NYC, I believe, is one guy I've really looked up to. I think y'all had him on Shop Talk at one point, but yeah, he shares a lot of stuff that I've learned from, and that's part of the reason behind why I started doing it, is because I started to learn how to make some things. I'm not super advanced by any means, but just being able to share kind of basic tips and tricks of stuff that people are curious about.
I think sometimes about like what inspires you to be a maker, right? Like how do you get interested in that kind of stuff? Everybody I know that is doing something like what you're doing, what I'm doing. There was a point in their childhood or something about their upbringing that sort of fed into it. And I think being from a small town in the South, you're just surrounded all the time by people that are just doing everything themselves. It's like, it's such a DIY culture. And have you found the same thing? I mean, do you think kind of where you grew up, were there a lot of people around you that were, making things and fixing things?
Yeah. I mean, the first person that comes to mind is my grandfather was always kind of a handy person. He, could weld. He had a big workshop full of all types of tools and pretty much anything that you would need to fix essentially anything. He actually worked at U.S. Motors. There's a plant in Philadelphia that he worked at, and he was an industrial engineer. So he had that's probably where a lot of it comes from. But yeah, I mean, I think that throughout high school and college, I've always just been interested in how things work, and I was always kind of I like to follow technology, and I always watch like the Apple keynotes and things like that. I think those are always just really interesting. I'm kind of a early adopter, if you could say that, of a lot of technology. I bought the first iPad when it came out with like some money I'd saved up from cutting grass, around the town and things like that. So I mean, it's I think it would probably stem from there. But yeah, I mean, we also had a farm, and I worked on that. We had a guy that was kind of one of the also like a carpenter guy, and I would work with him and see how he would fix things and build things. So I was around a lot of people that, like you said, were kind of DIY type people, and carpenters and plumbers and a little bit of everything, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's probably where it came from. And then just I kind of grew up during the right time, I guess, because it started a lot of technology started to come along a lot. I started to have powerful laptops that could be running CAD and things like that wouldn't have been possible 10 or 15 years before that. And then I remember I bought like a very cheap like Prusa Mark II, I guess at the time, knockoff 3D printer, like off of eBay, and I tried to put it together. It didn't work, and I kind of found it again. I guess it was like a summer when I wasn't doing a whole lot, and tried to fix it. Eventually got it to work, but then ended up selling that, and then bought like the Prusa Mark III, like the actual one. And that's, I think, when it really kind of took off for me, was that I could actually, I remember the first thing I designed in Fusion was, it was like a handle for, we have a utility vehicle like back home. It's a Kawasaki Mule, and it had like a glove compartment with a door, like a little door on it, and the handle had broken off. So I modeled up like a little handle and printed it off with the printer that I just gotten, and thought that it was pretty cool. I could make something that actually fits the holes of the mule, and it was functional, and something that I don't know if they even really made those anymore, because it was an older model. So that was kind of when I was like, okay, this is kind of cool thing to be able to do because now I can have the design tools and the small little 3D printer to print it off with. So, and then from there, I guess got into I watched a lot of stuff about Amazon FBA. I just kind of think of a way to make some type of passive income, and just kind of by happenstance, I just got the Mark III printer, and I started learning about these enclosures. At the time, it was the IKEA LAC, like version 1 enclosure, and started reading about, where do you get the plexiglass font? Like, where do people buy the plexiglass? And realized that there wasn't really a good place to buy the plexiglass. So just, the combination of learning about Amazon FBA and then kind of finding this niche of people needing some plexiglass to complete the enclosure kit, ended up finding a manufacturer to help me do that. And then that's kind of where 3D Sourcer comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting to see where 3D printing has gone, in the past. I don't know. I mean, I've been paying close attention to this stuff for probably, I don't know, almost 20 years now, but just in the last 10 years or so, we kind of went from this assumption that the 3D printer was going to be kind of like a microwave. Everybody was going to have one, and you'd be able to just I need a new spatula, and there it goes on your printer. Obviously, that didn't really happen. There's a lot of limitations around that. You need to know a little too much. You need to know more about the process of 3D printing and 3D models and how all that stuff works to make that happen than you do to put popcorn in the microwave, right?
Right.
But what's really interesting to me is it's always kept this it's always kept its place in manufacturing for prototyping, right? Like that hasn't gone anywhere. It's just gotten more and more popular for just the prototyping phase of anything, no matter how it's going to be made. The other thing is for production, right? So like there's I forget what you call this graph, but basically like the cost per unit of
Right.
a 3D printed part. There's a lot of cases now where that's actually competitive with other kinds of manufacturing, right? Like, we've all seen that around. But then this other thing is sort of this, the hobbyist niche, I guess you could call it. And my favorite part of that is the stuff you're doing. It's the practical stuff, right? Because trinkets are all well and good. It's nice to have a little, Yoda figurine or whatever it is. Like I don't begrudge anybody the fun stuff like that, but being able to make something that has a really specific use, where with just really limited knowledge, enough to know that like I need to know where these holes are and how big they are, and like I can just jot that down real quick on a notepad, right? And make a part, and then now I can fix this thing, and now I don't have to junk this whole device, whatever it is, or I can sort of replace stuff that isn't made anymore for whatever this thing is. I find that stuff super exciting, and it's so satisfying to do it yourself. If you've ever repaired something with something you've 3D printed on your own, it's just so I don't know. I find it super exciting.
The thing that's really I think is unique about 3D printing is like you can make custom parts to fit exactly like what you need. That's kind of the magic of it, is like you can do one-off parts like priced sufficiently. It's not like it's an exorbitant price to print off this like custom part. And there's a lot of ways that I think about that. Like, for example, the clean cable caddy design that I mentioned, I actually made custom. I don't have all of them here. These are like 2 versions. I actually made 10 versions of these for like each of the most popular Apple cables, and they all fit, I mean, pretty good, because they're all like minutely different. The cable size is a little bit different. The connector is a little bit different. And I made those files available for free. So, anyone that wants those can have them and print them off for, I think it costs maybe 50 cents or so a filament. So, you can make that type of custom stuff available now that would be impossible without these tools. Like you said, there's just a ton of neat uses of 3D printing that are, I think from people that aren't really involved in this space, a lot of people see it as like, oh, this is a plastic, cheap thing, which, like, granted, it is cheap, which is good because you can go through a lot of iterations, but that's kind of like a stepping stone to more refined products. Like you said, there's no way that you could go through 4 or 5 or 6 iterations of a product in a week without some feasible way to kind of test those out. And for instance, for the clean cable caddy, I would basically just guess, print it off. It would take like an hour, and then I would, make micro adjustments, print it off again, just go through it with rapid iteration. And that's impossible, if you didn't have those tools. So, like you said, it's a really, really interesting space to be a part of.
It's also impossible to figure that out without physical artifacts. I mean, you can be the best 3D modeler in the world, but until you hold the thing in your hand, you don't know what it is. I mean, you don't get those details. You don't know that that needs to be a full round fillet, instead of whatever the chamfer that I chose, or the depth of this little thing, or what's the sequence of wrapping it. I mean, you can do this stuff for decades, and you're still not going to be there until you can actually hold the thing in your hand. And yeah, it's kind of amazing how accessible these tools are now. We all take it for granted, It's like it's such a big part of our lives now. I mean, me and you and pretty much anybody watching this podcast. It's 3D printer, whatever. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got a Prusa Mark III or whatever it is. But, I don't know. I try to step back every once in a while and just like realize, 8-year-old me would have freaked out that this was possible,
Right.
And like, it's amazing what you can do with this stuff. It's one of the things I love about the hobbyist community is that all of y'all do that. You all have like, you kind of keep that sense of wonder, and you understand that this thing is capable of so much, and like, just keep pushing the limits. And, Prusa is a great example of that too. I mean, there were lots of 3D printing companies kind of in the early days of these things going kind of prosumer or consumer level that were using 3D printed parts. It seemed like kind of an obvious thing to do. And it was kind of a cool marketing thing too, right? It's like, look, this machine can print itself, but they're the one that really stands out still to this day, using, FDM 3D printed parts to build their machines, and their machines are great and they perform really well.
To be straightforward, a lot of the business I've done is related to Prusa printers in some way. Like the Sumo enclosure is literally an enclosure for the Prusa XL, and then the DLAC enclosure I sell with 3D Sorcerer is basically an enclosure for the Prusa Mark IV, Prusa Mark III series. So one thing that I really got a lot from in the early days, especially, and I still kind of encourage people to do this if you're trying to get into 3D printing and try to learn, how to design parts, is just to get one of their kits and put it together and just kind of pay attention to how they printed different things. Because I see a lot of times people, will design things, and it might be a good design in Fusion, but it's difficult to print, with good quality. So that's something that it takes some trial and error and just some experience to get to where you kind of understand how to design things for 3D printing. And I try to kind of emphasize that when I can, when I'm trying to teach people things.
Yeah I couldn't agree more. I mean, I actually give the exact same piece of advice anytime I talk to somebody that's interested in getting in 3D printing. You mentioned you had something you had something to show in Fusion.
Yeah. So I thought to just kind of walk through, just to showcase some of the stuff I've done in Fusion. We could do a quick screen share if that's all right.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Let's see.
All right. So we got the clean cable caddy here. This is the 1 meter version. Yeah. Show us what you got, man. Are we going to see some parameters shifting here?
No. So I actually made them individually. I kind of copied and pasted, honestly. But I mean, I think this is just a good example of, this looks like it's a complicated model, but it's relatively not that long of a timeline. And, I think that just being able to show this and visualize it, in Fusion is a really great aspect of it. And, I actually matched the appearance to what the color that I use. Like in the original video was this same color blue. So it's kind of cool. And then thought that I could just, show, like, for example, this is the DLAC enclosure, and all this was modeled, completely in Fusion, except for I got the
Prusa
file for the Prusa, off the internet, but otherwise, I think a lot of people probably seen the classic IKEA lac table, which is the idea behind it was essentially I wanted to make an enclosure that could replace the lac enclosure, and it also includes an LED light. So we have that here. And then obviously you can change the naming here. And then we have all these different corners. I don't have a corner on that one. Let's see if I can get that back real quick. And then have like some little detail here just to kind of round off the edge. You have kids or something like that. We don't want to have really sharp corners. So that was the idea behind having a little slot here. And then I think that, just in general, like being able to see this in 3-dimensional space is just really nice. And again, I use this color scheme, which I'll show in a little bit, for the actual design. You'll be able to see the similarities. And then the final just demonstration I wanted to show, this was completely in Fusion, including the Prusa XL. So you can kind of hide these for now. And you can see here, this is actually a guide. So this isn't part of the file, but this is essentially the Prusa XL. The back plate's missing in this example, but otherwise everything is pretty much modeled to scale. And Prusa, for good reason, wasn't really handing these out. So we hand measured everything and basically reverse engineered it. And then we're able to make the enclosure fit pretty tightly. And the way that we do this on the side is we basically attach these into the 3030 aluminum. Mm-hmm. So you kind of see there, this is the 3030 slots, and then there's some bolts or nuts that go into that, and then just kind of use that to attach everything. And then we have this, we're able to externally mount the LCD here, and then use some magnets behind the doors. And then the top chamber is completely removable. So if you need to do maintenance or anything like that, this just kind of lifts off. So it's really easy to kind of access if you need it. So those are kind of the designs I just wanted to show. And like I said, this was completely done in Fusion to scale. And now we export the DXF files to provide those plexiglass sheets and, have them laser cut and all that. And then just to kind of showcase the actual product. So this is the Sumo, like the actual picture of it. And you can see like the color scheme is identical. So you can make things look kind of photorealistic to a certain extent. And then the DLAC is kind of a similar, visualization with the black light here and then the parts. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all, and hopefully people will be able to either use it as inspiration or try to, kind of get some ideas from it.
It's really cool, man. Thanks so much for sharing. It's been really, really great conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, I really enjoyed being here, and thank y'all for having me.
Hey everyone, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things Shop Talk. If you're ready to try Fusion for yourself, find the link in our description.